Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you, DDA, for that introduction. He asked me if I had a bio, and I'm like, I don't have one. So he's like, I know you enough. I'll say it. So thank you so much for those kind words. And yeah, thank you everyone for being part of this second part of the Toastmasters meeting, which is the PM forum. But this time we're changing it up and we're having a panel discussion. We invited a few really like big hitters in the PM world right now to join us and for them to give us some insights about the PMO strategies and what it is going on right now. Okay, so I'm going to focus on the slides right now. So really the main purpose of today's meeting is to have that meaningful and thoughtful discussion about the challenges, the benefits of a PMO, and hearing it from the people who have been in the trenches. Now, you guys might be wondering, why am I talking, or are we discussing PMOs when we're all project managers, or at least have a good understanding of the PMBOK, what is a PMO, what's a project management, and all that. So I wanted to give you guys a little bit more of a background. Didier did a really good job explaining who I am, but just a little bit more when it comes to the actual timeline, and this will make sense after. So yeah, so I do have a solutions delivery consultant background at BMO, where I worked with smaller projects, but I never had a chance to work with PMOs because I was under a different department. So I was on the treasury payment solution side. And then when I decided, hey, I need to go back to school and finish my degree, I also still worked as a project manager in some student association, student groups, so that I can really get those really important, for example, leadership skills of being a project manager. Again, because this is a student group, no PMOs, I had never dealt with them. And then because I knew from the start, even when I was at BMO, that I wanted to be a project manager, I did know that after I finished my degree, I wanted to do my PMP. So I studied PMBOK, I did that exam and passed it just last December. And it just happened that a couple of days later, I got this job being a coordinator at the city of Brampton in their CECC/EPMO department, where I am helping develop and mature the project, like corporate or like the enterprise project management of the city. Now, because I am still a new project manager, my knowledge in the field is so limited that I was like, I have no idea what is CECC and what PMO is. So I did my research, went and listened to podcasts where I listened to PMO strategies by Laura Bernard and Dev and Gabrielle. I know you guys were there because I definitely kept listening to those because I was eager to learn. And I think the fact that I just recently graduated and I had this learning environment still, or like learning mentality, I still was malleable enough or eager enough to really reach out to people, reach out to my networks. And this is where really it's great to be part of this PMUT community and this Project Management United Toastmasters group, because you guys are giving me an opportunity to take what I know, like the technical stuff of it, of like what is a PMO according to PMBOK, and take it beyond that and be able to really talk to people who are doing what I'm actually trying to learn, and learn from your experiences, learn from what you've learned, best practices, and what can I avoid in the future. And as I'm listening and learning and asking questions, I actually went to just a panel this morning with Laura Bernard as well, with the PMO Leaders Association, I believe. And they came up with this current state of PMO as of 2021. And these study kind of took me by surprise in a sense, but not really, which is, some of these says like only 1 in 4 completely agree that their process, like intake process, is timely and transparent. Or it's so hard to track the progress of projects, even though you already have a PMO. Or for example, like around half say that they are able to respond promptly to executive requests for data, but like 1 in 5 say that they are unable to do this on a timely basis. And from my understanding, as me being new to PMO, those reports are very important because those drives the decisions when it comes to like the business leaders. And knowing this, I realized that, you know what, I really want to understand what's happening. And my hope is, because I know this is a little selfish because I am in a position where I'm eager to learn all these, but my hope is that this event will prove useful to at least a few of you in the audiences that might be in the same boat as I am. You know, still new, maybe you guys haven't had a chance to work with a PMO or real just interested and curious about what PMO is all about. So this is kind of just a structure of how we're gonna do this panel. So the first part, I really wanna get audience participation. Like I mentioned, I didn't know anything about PMO until I'm in here now and I just started. So I wanted to go through a word cloud exercise with everyone where you guys can let us know how familiar are you with PMOs? Like what words come up when you think of PMO? And then we'll go through straight to the panel discussions. And then at the end, we'll save the Q&A for anyone else who wants to learn more about the topics that we're going to discuss today. Also, just a side note, if you guys do have any questions during the panel, please put it on the chat, and then we'll bring it up during the Q&A section later on. We also have Norm, who is a timer during our Toastmaster event this past hour. He'll also help us kind of time and make sure that we're keeping track of time, because I do respect your time and the time you're providing to us. Okay, so actually, before we start on introducing the panelists, let's go straight to the word cloud. So give me 1 second here. If I can just have everyone go to this website, and let me see if I can put it on the chat here. So try that, and then it will ask for a number. And then if you guys could just type in what words or like, what do you think of when you hear the word project management office or PMO? You know, like I've heard supportive, controlling, directive, like anything at all. And then hopefully that can also give us some insights later on when we're discussing with the panelists, some of the inputs that you put in. And you can keep typing the same word, and then as more people type that specific word, it gets bigger and bigger, and we know that that's a really main topic or information that we might want to cover later on as well. I like it. Thanks, everyone. Okay, we'll give it maybe 1 more minute. So when we see 7:22, maybe we'll start. Okay, so thank you, everyone. So it is 7:22 right now. We will start and go ahead and go straight to the panelists. I'm actually going to ask, instead of maybe sharing my screen, I'm gonna close the screen, a share screen, so that we can just have bigger pictures of each other. And we can just make it more of a discussion. And I wanted to maybe ask, I don't know if we can pin people so that we can spotlight, you know, Dev, Gabrielle. Are we able to do that?
I actually have Dev, Jean, Gabrielle, and I pinned for the recording, but that's for my screen.
Perfect. And you're recording, so that's all we need. Yeah. Okay, perfect. Okay, so we will start from the first part of the panel discussion. It's pretty much a panel introduction. So we know, from my understanding, Dev, this is not your first time visiting. So thank you again for coming in. But I wanted for people who are guests to just maybe, you know, introduce yourself, where you're currently working, how many years of experience, either in the PMO side of things or PM side of things. And then maybe give us a little bit more background of what you've had experience with when it comes to PMO. So are they, supportive, controlling, and the degree of influence, and really what type of, what do you feel about the project management office in general, keeping in mind that the word cloud came up with structure, process, documentation, those are the main topics for now. And I'll let you guys kind of just start that off. And we'll start with you, Dev, if you could please. Thank you.
Sure. I'll make it quick. You've heard it a few times. I've been in project management now for about 33 years and have worked in telecom, have worked in healthcare with cancer agencies, both federal and provincial, have worked with TD Bank and municipal government at the City of Toronto. I'm about to move back to TD Bank to lead a program related to compliance, Office of Dodd-Frank, legal, and anti-money laundering in their corporate transformation office. I've led through the years, I was just trying to count them up, 8 project management offices of varying different sizes and varying different levels of effectiveness, and found that one size does not fit all, one type does not fit all. And one of the key things that you really have to be mindful of as a PMO leader is the level of project management authority, evolution, the level of maturity and your level of authority and mandate as a leader. So I hand it off to one of my colleagues now.
Thank you so much, Dev, and congratulations on that new role, by the way.
Thanks.
Okay, then thank you. Gabrielle, do you want to take it on next? Thanks.
Sure. So my name is Gabrielle. I have been working in project management for over 20 years. And before that, I was a line manager. So I worked in supply chain management. I worked in North American customer service. So I really come from more of a business perspective and fell into project management through an ERP implementation, where I was a subject matter expert, became the lead, became the manager, and so here I went. For me, project management always has to be practical. So I have been in organizations, manufacturing, in the forest product industry. I have been working in healthcare, in the non-for-profit world, and I have seen the smaller PMOs. I have been in charge of 2 PMOs and have been also working as a project manager. I cannot agree more with Steph. There is no one size that fits all. But what we always have to keep in mind when we think of PMOs, when we think of ourselves as project managers, is to create value. And the way we create value is to understand the organizational objectives and how our PMOs can contribute to achieve those strategic goals. And I think that's always what we have to keep in mind. A little bit more about myself. I am now a project consultant and coach. And last year I did actually a white paper on PMOs, and I was able to reach out across Canada to talk to various PMO leaders. And the drive for value, the drive for bringing industry knowledge into the PMO is becoming bigger and bigger. So I think that's enough about me. Thank you, Kristin.
Thank you so much, Gabrielle. And yes, I started reading into that white paper. Very informative. Thank you so much. That was pretty much what I've been going back to as a reference point as well. So thank you. Up next, can I please have Jane Taylor introduce herself? Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jane. I'm a digital project manager have been in the industry for over 10 years. My entire life is in marketing agency. Prior to project manager, I was a web developer. So in my career path, I have been part of large global PMO, and also at small company, I'm creating my own PMO. Project managers influence the company culture greatly. Think about any project. Project managers are the one connects all the dots and work with all the subject experts, and no other roles can influence the company or the project the way project managers do. And that was my answer to your topic 1 question.
Thank you so much, Jane. And I really appreciate it. I think maybe I'll probably go back to the culture thing because I do want to like get a little bit deeper on that one. So thank you. But I just want to have the mic to give the mic to Liban. So please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Kristin, and thank you for hosting this event. My name is Liban Gashan. Although I'm project manager today, I wasn't always a project manager by title. I've had the PMP certificate for over 10 years, but really my career was consulting, business transformation, performance improvement, customer practice in the telecommunications industry. Did work in North America, Europe, and the Middle East. It wasn't until 2017 when I moved back to Toronto from Saudi Arabia, where I was Director of Brand Experience Performance Improvement for Virgin Mobile Saudi Arabia, that my client sat me down after the first year and said, forget this business transformation consultant work. You're actually a fantastic client manager, project manager. You're influencing this project. Would you consider in becoming a project manager for us? And as a consultant, you're always doing some sort of project management, whether it's the stakeholder management, whether it's the budget management, whether it's the task management. You're always wearing one way or another, you're wearing different hats. So I did consider, and I moved over to PM role, I would say fully by title in 2018. And one of the people that I actually work with from the PMO side is none other than Dev. We'll get into some of the interactions that we have back and forth and some of the benefits that actually PMO provides to the PM world. But Dev, before we go any further, I want to say the news of you leaving the city of Toronto is still sinking in for me. I don't think I will be happy when you're not at that seat and I cannot pick up the phone and say, Dev, what do I do here?
You can still pick up the phone and I'll still answer wherever.
Thank you. Good to know that. Kristin, so yeah, that's my introduction and how I became a PM.
Thank you so much, Liban. Thank you. Which kind of brings back to like being part of the city. And this is where I want to tie in that culture that Jane was mentioning just recently about, you know, like, and Gabrielle and Dav, you mentioned it as well, different PMOs have different needs and they're all different everywhere you go. But is there something that I should be aware of between public and private, right? Because for public, for example, it's election year. Projects are coming up. Is it because it's needed or is it because it's election year? And then there's also for private, they're more structured in a way that the leaders don't change every 4 years. The strategic, like the business strategies are very similar. Usually it means profit or, you know, like expanding innovation. But for public, it's a little bit different. So I guess I want to just maybe pick a little bit of your brain, Dav and Gabrielle, whichever who wants to start first, like how that culture of the public sector affect how PMOs work or how PMO affect the culture of a public sector. If you could please, thank you.
Gabrielle, I will hold back if you want to go for it.
Oh, I think you should go on this one first, Dev. The next one I take first. But this one you should take first.
No problem. Okay. So first of all, if you look at models of culture, and one of the things I do is I'm a culture assessment and management consultant for organizations. Cultures tend in organizations to fall into one of the following quadrants. There is the hierarchy type of culture, which is very process oriented. It's very structured. There tends to be a top-down kind of decision-making process. There is an adhocracy, which is the exact opposite. Your CEO flies by in shorts on a skateboard in the office on the way to his office where there is a full-fledged banana tree that he works under on a daily basis. And things are very, very changeable. There's not a lot of process and structure in place. It's all about creativity. Then there are clan-based cultures, and they tend to be like working in a family. The CEO is either mom or dad to the organization and tends to function in that way, a parental figure with a lot of warmth, a lot of relationship strength that happens between people. And its diametric opposite is the performance-based culture. Think about Rogers. It's all about the results. It's all about achieving the metrics around revenue, that kind of thing. So this is what happens. Your PMO tends to align with the organizational culture that dominates in the culture that you're in. In government, in the public sector, in municipal, provincial, federal governments, you tend to be working in a hierarchy. Banks are the same way too. Highly complex organizations, but decision-making tends to be top-down, and they're all about process and compliance. So the PMO will be primarily about making compliance work, ensuring that all projects are compliant with the corporate governing processes for the organization. Now, that's in the public sector. Depending on where you're located in the private sector, you would tend to be in a PMO that will try at least, or be pushed at least, to be more about performance results. Gabrielle put it very nicely just now. She talked about the fact that PMOs need to create value, and a PMO needs to understand how it can contribute to the achievement of strategic results. So in an organization where strategic results trumps everything else, the PMO is going to be about pushing to achieve those results. So you have on the one hand, compliance management. You have on the other hand, achieving results that are strategically important. In a performance-based culture, it's about performance. How are people performing to all of the key management indicators, KPIs, that might be in place? And in a clan-based culture, it's about everybody getting along, being nice with each other, warmly supportive of each other, that familial kind of supportiveness. I don't know if that answers your question, Kristin, but a few things to consider anyway.
It does. Thank you. It makes me realize now that I'm going back to my past experiences, from the bank, from like school, even how their projects are done, even now, because I guess I just started. So I'm starting to see the culture of the government side of things. And I'm starting to see that hierarchy. Like there's definitely like things that needs to be done before anything gets done, which adds to like, okay, for my understanding, for a PMO, especially when they're starting, you want to deliver value early. And because it's also different when there's that hierarchy where, okay, I have to wait for this manager to like give me this signature, and then the other thing, and it does postpone that value creation faster value creation. And because we're also new, we have to show the value so that we get buy-in, which kind of goes to the topic 2. I see Norm's red background, and this is maybe where I want to ask Gabrielle, because you did mention about having those strategic results. And I understand, because I am just a coordinator, do have a manager that has those strategies already implemented and the directors approve that. But how can we make sure that we sustain make sure that when we do come up with a strategy, we implement it and we see the outcome, but how do we make sure we sustain that? And we want to make sure that it continues in the future. And anything else that you want to add into that, that'd be great. Yes. Thank you.
So first of all, Deb, what a great explanation. And what I want to add to what Deb was also saying is, no matter if you're in the public sector and you're really driven by these rules and regulations, or in the private sector, what we always need to learn as PMO leaders and PMs is to navigate. And in this navigation, and Liban also mentioned this a little bit when he said, Dev, what am I going to do next? And this is no matter in what kind of a PMO you are in, is understanding who are the decision makers for you is going to be so important. Now, Kristin, your question is, so now you're starting your projects and your projects are longer. How do you keep that momentum going? And how do you keep the attention of your managers and your senior manager? And I have to say that is sometimes tough. And when I listen to my colleagues in large PMOs, is to prevent that flavor of the day, the flavor of the year is sometimes a challenge for us as PMs. What is so important as PMs and PMO leaders is that we speak the language of our bosses and our bosses' bosses, and that we can relate to them in that organizational language that makes sense to them and hold them accountable. And if I've learned anything over the last little while is on how important it is to understand who are your project and PMO sponsors and how do you keep them engaged. So as much as you need to manage your own projects, you also need to make sure you understand the sponsorship of your PMO and how to deliver value to them. And as Laura Bernard always says, you need to earn a seat at the table, at the seat of the table where the decisions are made.
Beautifully put.
And the project language talk is good for us. To our sponsors, it's the business language, the organizational language that we need to speak.
Thank you so much, Gabrielle. And I'm starting to see it now that because PMO is or at least for us, we're EPMO, so like the overarching like project management office, because there is also a PMO for IT, PMO for building development. There's functional PMOs. And I'm starting to realize that because they're also different, we need to be able to communicate like one language in a sense, so that we're all in the same page. And I think we're starting to get a hang of it, but it is still a challenge, because how do we stop people? So maybe this is more for like Liban and Jane, like as project managers and having all your years of experience, where okay, PMO says you need to change this process, this is a new standard, this is a new structure, and you know that perhaps, well, I'm comfortable with what I'm doing right now, or maybe you haven't had the buy-in yet, like I don't understand why we have to change it. Perhaps it's a communication thing, but do you have any experience or insights on if, for example, I'm telling you guys, hey, we're going to change the intake structure, what is the best way for me to make sure that we get adoption and endorsement from the actual project managers? Yeah, Liban, if you want to start.
I can start actually, and I can build on what Gabrielle and Dev said. I'm living through that. I'm going through that right now. So just by way of context, I'm managing multi-year, multi-million dollars for the City of Toronto's engineering construction services. These are the guys or the group that build these roads, bridges, water mains, you name it, right? Like the city infrastructure. They're trying to implement a cloud-based project management, document management that allows them to meet their mandates. Just to give you context, 2016, they delivered $650 million worth of design and construction. 2020, they delivered $1.2 billion, so almost 100% increase. It was forecasted to be 1.25, but we went into the pandemic and there was a lot of shutdown. So in my role as a project manager, I find that I'm managing 4 key stakeholders. I'll start with the low-hanging fruit, which is the actual stakeholders or the subject matter experts from the division, people that are going to be using the solution. And so I have to make sure that they know what is getting done now, what's getting done next quarter, and so on. So that is just the standard project manager template, vanilla, really nothing is happening. The other three that I need to deal with are the chief engineer, who's my business sponsor. And as Gabriel said earlier, he is not really interested in the technical aspect of it. He's interested in this solution will be implemented or this portion will get done. And this is what it will translate to in your business. This is how much efficient you will be, or this is how much construction you'll be able to deliver. So that is one chief that I have to be able to speak to at the steering committee. The second person that's sitting at the steering committee is the chief technology officer, whose team is actually really procuring and implementing this solution. And that chief, basically, while he's concerned about the technology, he's also interested about return of investment. We burned this much money. What am I getting now? I signed this contract. What is happening right now? And a good example of it is we're getting a cloud-based solution. You pay the license, any subscription, Adobe. When you sign up, you have to pay your subscription upfront. At the city, which is a public institution, if the licenses are being used today for all, let's say 100 people, I'm just using 100 as a random number, it's valid. But if you implement in the solution and the licenses are going to be used a year from now, you can't just prepay for something that will not be used. The Auditor General will not accept that. And I'm learning this. I mean, I came from private sector. I was a consultant with Ernst & Young. No one comes to you and asks for freedom of information to produce documents. But with the city, TronStar will come and they will ask, I want to see this contract, what happened to it? And tomorrow, your name, Liban Gashan, my name, I should say, will be front page of TronStar because I signed off on that. So that's the other piece that I need to manage as a project manager. The fourth wheel is my interaction with the PMO, which is where you were getting at, Kristin. In that seat, I was lucky to have someone like Dev at that seat, and it becomes more of a communication back and forth. I know what Dev needs. The city is investing something in way over $100 million in transformation, in infrastructure. So the chief technology officer needs to know which projects are burning what amount of money and when, and what they're delivering and when. So I understand the mandate that Dev has, and my project has to report to him. So it becomes more of a conversation back and forth. Liban, I need this set of numbers. I need this amount of data. And I have to be able to say, well, my project, like remember what Dev was saying earlier, not one size fits all, right? So I have to be able to tell him that my project is managed differently because A, B, and C. I can deliver this at this time. Those other two fields or those two other reports, they don't apply to me. So the biggest thing in my whole relationship comes down to two things: communication, but before you can communicate, understanding what the other person needs. I will admit I come from software engineering background. Eventually I get my MBA. Eventually I did my consulting, but it took me years to go from X equals 5, Y equals 10, and this is how I understand, and you have to accept it, to being able to go to the other side of the table and saying that, oh, this is what you need. Oh, okay, this is how I have it. Let me translate it for you. So it comes with experience. It comes ability to willing to cross the chasm to get to the other side to understand what the person is asking. And also it comes down to ability or willingness to learn. Because if you're not willing to learn what the other person is asking for, it's gibberish. It doesn't really make any sense. So that is what I found. If I can sum up my experience and the things that I need as a project manager and the things that I need to deliver, really just comes down to understanding what's required by the other person or the other group. Doesn't matter whether they are a colleague or a chief level exec that you're reporting to, and also being able to deliver that in a language that they understand.
Thank you so much. And it's really nice to kind of hear that, because you mentioned something about it comes with experience. And I think that's one thing I knew I didn't have coming into this role. And this is why I'm like, you know what, let me talk to the people who have experience. So this is why we're here.
You're doing it the right way. Yeah.
Thank you. Jane, do you want to add anything to that?
So I've never worked in a public sector, but I have
private
clients
fine. Yeah.
in public sector. So I'm going to talk more in the private sector.
For sure.
And so all my projects, they are in two groups. They're either client projects or they're internal projects. So for clients project, it's more straightforward because the company usually have services or product to offer, and each project will come with an estimate. So project manager will, your mandate is to deliver this project, within the scope, timeline, and of course within the budget. And the clients you're working with, they will focus on the project value and then the performance. So it's pretty straightforward to evaluate if the project is successful. To be part of the PMO, did I ever follow a process that I thought wasn't necessary? Of course I have. The larger the PMO is, the more unnecessary processes you will have to follow. And I use unnecessary to work incorrectly because each project manager have their own style to manage a project. And when I work with the client projects, the company care less about project manager style, because whatever works, you deliver your project to the goal. And also, I also learned that sometimes doesn't matter what you do, you could be doing everything right and you just face a difficult client. It's not possible to work with every single client. And sometimes like the personality have conflict, so you really need to have a good fit. But it comes less important when you're working on the client project because they evaluate the project differently. For internal projects, they are in my experience, much more difficult to manage because there are usually too many cooks in the kitchen, and most of the time they're not clear on what they want, or they thought they knew what they want, but halfway through the project, no one remembers what they want. So that happens a lot. And for the internal project, because of the hierarchy, there's more politics you also need to be aware of. So that's difficult in the project management, that sometimes you just can't just focus on the project. You have to look at cultural, politics, other factor, which is unfortunate sometimes in this kind of environment. And I will share with you a job post I saw recently, that in the job post, it clearly has a bullet point that they are looking for a candidate with a thick skin. So you can imagine what kind of culture you'll be stepping into. So that was a flag to me. Even HR didn't see the flag and they think, oh, this is the job posting we're looking for. This is the candidate we're looking for. So there you go.
Thank you so much, Jane. That's so interesting for that to be in a job posting. Yeah, if I read that, I'll be like, no, that's not me. Thank you so much, everyone. We are about to wrap up. I know I wish this was a longer discussion, but just to wrap it up, I wanted to kind of get everyone's kind of insights when it comes to like advice, any advice you guys have for myself or for anyone else, or perhaps even like growth or professional development advice. From my understanding, at least for me, I haven't looked into it too deeply. PMO is pretty much like where do I go from here? I guess as a project manager, I kind of understand, like you work with projects and you just increase your experience and you get bigger and bigger projects. But for a PMO leader or like for a coordinator like myself, where do we go next? So yeah, if we could just maybe start with Dev, or if you want to add anything else, please do so.
Sure. So there are different stages and phases from a project leadership or professional perspective. In the early stage of your career, you'll be doing jobs like a project analyst. You might be a project coordinator. You might be a senior analyst or a senior project coordinator. And that tends to be the early stage. Then you branch into, or you move into, or you jump to. It could even be early, and it could be the first thing you do, moving into becoming a project manager. then a senior project manager. You might then become a program manager with multiple projects under you. And there might even today be a role called portfolio manager, where you're not yet in management or leadership, but you've got multiple programs under you. And it's a hard role to have because you may not have the staff to be able to run what you need to run. What tends typically to happen after that stage is that you move into being a manager of project managers. Now, you may not yet have a PMO that you lead, but you're managing project managers and project coordinators working on a program or a portfolio. From there, you might move on to become a leader of a project management office. Now, there are two different directions your career can go in. The direction of expertise. You are the only project manager in the world who manages SAP projects that you can manage, or projects for NASA that require a certain level of scientific expertise, that kind of thing, right? Or you can go into the more general management-based sorts of hierarchy of roles that you take on. Around advice, there's more about that, but I'm not going to go into it. Try and get yourself some training around organizational change management. If you have people throwing money at you at the end of the year, get some training in emotional intelligence or emotional effectiveness. Try if you can at some point in time, even if you have to pay for it yourself out of your bonus, which is what I did. Fly yourself to a country like the Netherlands, where you can get yourself certified in culture change management and assessment. Because what is beginning to happen is a convergence of multiple domains and disciplines to create something that is different to traditionally what we've looked at project management as being. Get ahead of that curve by getting the necessary, what looks like very different and disparate certifications, which when tied together, put you in the running for roles that will ask for the combination of those things, together with stuff like AI, if possible.
Thank you so much for that, Dev. Gabrielle, do you want to add anything, please?
Yeah, I think we are in a very exciting time of project management. And Antonio Rodriguez, who is the head of PMI globally, just issued his paper on we are moving into the project economy. And what I see coming is that the project management skills will be important no matter where you go. And it will be less so the initial, if it is agile or waterfall or hybrid, it doesn't really matter. We all need to find a way to drive our projects forward in the most efficient and effective way. Dev said it so well. We need to become people leaders. We are people change leaders. Our projects always means that people have to change, and we have to help people through that change. So as Dev says, it's the next designation is quite often to become a change leader besides being a project manager. And then if you develop any kind of an expertise in a certain industry or with a certain product, the world is at your oyster. You don't have to stay within one industry. You can go with many different industries to many different countries. I firmly believe project management and AI, and Paul Boudreau is a guest here at Toastmasters. It's going to come and is making us as project managers. It's going to make us people leaders. And I'm looking forward when project managers become CEOs.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Gabrielle. Jane and Liban, do you guys want to add anything else?
I'll touch on or add on some of the items that Dev and Gabrielle said. Two areas that I always advise project managers to really hone their skills. Number one, data. So it doesn't matter what you do in your project, it's all about data. It's all about the finances, resources, timelines, and you can translate that to data. So really know your data, be able to pull it up, be able to present it. To that second point, present it, hone your skills in presenting your data. If you cannot present it in a really bite size that people can understand and you can paint a bigger picture, you really, you're not delivering the story. One of the ways that you can do that is clubs like Project Managers United Toastmasters, where you actually have a platform to practice your public speaking. Because as a project manager, you're always doing public speaking one way or another, whether it's impromptu, or whether it's a formal monthly meeting with your stakeholders. So those are the two things. Know your data, know how to capture it, know how to present it, and also learn your public speaking skills.
Thank you. Jane?
Because I'm going to tell you a slightly different perspective from my experience. The first question is PMO higher than project manager? Because all project managers report to PMO director. So I'll come back to this question at the end. Project managers, very straightforward, work with clients and work with team members to get the job done. And PMO, there are many roles in PMO. So PMO people very good at resolving conflicts and creating change control processes. I work closely with project analysis, and then that person will price out a project, and this person will also check the technology and make sure the project is feasible before it's handed to a project manager to execute. And so this person, very important at the PMO office. So this person will unify all the pricing structure. So we have 10 project managers, we're not going to have different prices to the client or different clients. And so project managers and PMO are two different entities in project management, and project managers requires more people skills because you have to work with different people, and different skill sets are required for people working in the PMO. Some people, they don't like to work with clients, so which is fine. So they will stay within the PMO. But my advice to you is PMO supports project managers, and the company sees project managers as profit because they bring in, at least deliver profit. But PMO it's assets, it's a cost to the company. So if the company wants to grow, they will throw more money into hiring more project manager. They're not going to grow their PMO. So that's my experience and intake.
No, thank you. It kind of brings a point, and I know we're over time, but I remember hearing this where a PMO is a business function like HR, finance, where they're actually there to help the organization deliver the strategies per se. And yes, I see what you're coming from there, where really where the profit's coming from are the project managers. So thank you for that. It is 8:01. I just want to open up the floor to people who have questions. But before we do that, I just want to thank you guys. So Dev, Gabrielle, Jane, Liban, for coming in and sharing your insights, your experience, your advice. It's very, very, I'm very much appreciated all this time that you have given. And hopefully, like everyone else, have gotten something out of this that you can take on to your day-to-day job, or even in normal life. But yeah, so thank you so much. For anyone else, please go to the chat if you have any questions, or unmute yourself while we still have them. And yeah, I think maybe have 2 or 3 more minutes if you guys are okay just answering these questions if we can. Perfect. Are there any questions so far? I was not looking at the chat, so hopefully no one messaged me directly. Let me see. Oh, I do have one. Give me 1 second. Let me just read. If I may ask speaker questions, I want to know how each of you / speakers, what are the most needed soft skills as a good PM, and what makes a good PM? So project manager. I think this is pretty general. So anyone who has Any insight on this, like Deb, Gabrielle? This question is from Dife, I believe. Yeah.
I will go first.
Go ahead.
So two aspects of it. First and foremost, I mean, project management, you're actually managing people without really having the power. Oftentimes you're borrowing resources. So you really, as Def said earlier, you really need to know your team members, have a good understanding of their emotional temperature. So really have a good people skills. That's number one. Number two, so having a people skill will not get you anywhere. You'll be just somebody who doesn't deliver anything. You need to be able to deliver project, which means that you have to lead your team to deliver projects. So the other side of the equation, the opposite side of the coin, is that you have to be able to lead your team to deliver things, meaning that you have to know what are you delivering. If it's a SAP implementation, if that specialized, or if it's a general, I'm launching a website, e-commerce, you should be able to lead your team. So it's I look at it as a yin yang, people side of aspect of things and the delivery side of things. So at some point you'll find the balance, but those are the two things that I would say two muscles that I would say try to build early on in your career, because it only gets faster and heavier as you go up the ladder and pick up more projects.
So I want to give you 3 tips, and adding to everything that Liban said is, as a project manager and leader, watch out within your team 2 emotions. The first one is anger. The second one is blame. As soon as you see those emotions, you need to act, because you're derailing your project team. They're not paying attention anymore to the tasks. They are just so upset that they were blamed for something, that there was not proper accountability. Or if your project team members get angry, a whole day can go by, and all what they're worried about is why they were so angry about a situation. And last but not least, I'll challenge us all to stop saying yes, but, and replace it with yes, and. Because what you're doing with that very simple change is you're acknowledging you actually said something that made sense, and I'm adding on to that. I'm not discounting on what you said. So those 3 things, anger, blame, and yes, and you will become a better project manager.
Give me some of the ways that works for unhappy team member on that day, make a request. You really can't do it. How do you say no? I feel project managers, not only like Liban said, you have to be able to learn, adapt yourself with the hard skills, but you have to be emotionally intelligent. But with all the overwhelming things, how do you reserve yourself to that time and space and being able to be selective? Anyway.
I will share one tip with Defei. I'm sure the book answer for the PM skill sets is a long list, but I would say being likable is important in my experience. If you're likable, people make mistakes all the time, and that's how we gain experience. And if you're likable, people likely to forgive you and then give you a pass. But if you don't make friends at the company, it's going to become the biggest thing. Oh my goodness, we're going to make a big deal out of it. So be likable. It's not an easy thing to do, but I don't know, like 5 steps to be likable. But that's something I always keep in mind.
I think what you really need to be highly successful as a PM is empathy with an equal focus on delivering business benefits or results. If it's all empathy, then what can happen is you can over-identify with your project team or with your colleagues without actually delivering the results. If you're only results focused, you can be hard, a little bit edgy. You can drive the team too hard. And given what our colleague just said, you can reduce your level of likability. A likable PM is going to be the kind of PM that people want to work with for multiple projects. But somebody who is just focused on delivering the results will be wonderful for one project, but you'll find that people will not want to work with you multiple times. So what do you need to empathize with? You need to empathize with all of the struggles and challenges that people have working in exceedingly changeable and unpredictable environments through the pandemic. People who are right now wrestling with low levels of depression, who feel isolated, lonely, they have difficulty concentrating, and they have difficulty, in spite of their ability to use remote tools, with actually getting stuff completed. Your empathy as a PM in circumstances like that will go a long way to helping people cope through, get through, and deliver the results that need to be delivered. But remember, if there was one primary thing you are hired for, my experience has been most PMs in most organizations are seen as a sunk cost. They're not revenue generators. For most PMs, being able to understand that you are there to generate results is your primary reason for being. But if you don't do it empathetically, you won't be there long.
Well said. I worked in smaller companies and big companies, that's thousands employees. I see good managers, good leaders. They are there to remove blockers, and sometimes the background are very technical developers. But I see one thing in common is they listen. Their coach, they listen. They don't be the center of attention all the time, but they spot when there's a blocker and they offer solutions.
Nicely put.
That's so nice. Thank you, everyone. Are there any other questions? Let me look at the chat. I don't think so, unless I missed something. But yeah, if there's nothing else, then please, thank you again for your time. You can log off. Please enjoy dinner if you haven't eaten yet. But yeah, thank you again, Dev, Gabrielle,
Thank you.
Jane,
Dev, if I
Yvonne. Great.
may I
Sorry,
connect you on the
sorry.
LinkedIn?
My apology. I forgot one thing.
Yeah.
We don't announce the winner of the table topic, so my bad. So
Okay, awesome. It's